Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you all for being here today. I represent the big First District of Kansas, which is 60 primarily rural counties in the western and central parts of Kansas. My district is the number one beef producing district, the number one wheat producing district, the number one milo producing district in the whole country. We have 60,000 farms, ranches, feed yards, and other small business, mostly in the agriculture space. The folks in my districts know all too well that their livelihoods often depend on forces outside of their control, which are droughts, floods, geopolitical events, and conflicts can drastically impact the markets that impact them. That's why for decades, small business end users like farmers and ranchers have used derivatives to hedge against volatility. Hedging common risks takes volatility out of the market for them, also helps them manage interest rate fluctuations and input cost increases that are vital for them to maintain their business. Unfortunately, the new bank capital requirements from the Federal Reserve's Basel III endgame, and by the way, it's been called Basel. It seemed like it's all bad, Mr. Chairman, for the district, for the small businesses in my district. But the endgame proposal threatens access to critical risk management tools for the ag industry and the small businesses in my district. These sweeping proposals will make it costly for banks to centrally clear derivatives, leaving commodity producers with higher prices and less ability to hedge these risks. These tools allow ag producers more predictability in their day-to-day operations, ultimately showing up at prices that we all pay at the grocery store. Simply put, when banks face new capital hikes, farmers, ranchers, and our small agribusinesses pay more to hedge that risk. My first question would be for you, Mr. Holtz-Eakin. It appears the federal regulators have done minimal economic analysis on the downstream effects of these requirements will have on our agriculture end users that are far outside of the major urban financial centers, especially small businesses like grain elevators and family farms. How can we better ensure the federal regulators account for the interests of all of our American communities, our rural ag producers included?
Well, first I'll just note that there's a bipartisan letter from members of Congress to the regulators about this issue of derivatives hedging, which Mr. Muser signed, and I don't know if you signed. I commend that letter to you, sort of spells out the problem very clearly. Second thing I'd say is, I'm not a lawyer, so my understanding of the Regulatory Flexibility Act is that it was passed by Congress to make sure that all the regulators were cognizant of the direct and indirect costs they placed on small businesses. And it seems that with great regularity, nobody pays attention to the direct and indirect costs that people place on small businesses. That's happened in both administrations of both parties for a long time. I would suggest you take a close look at the Regulatory Flexibility Act and see where it can be tightened up to make sure that that analysis actually gets done and that failure to do it makes the rule non-viable. And that doesn't seem to be the case right now.
Yeah, I agree. And Mr. Chairman, I appreciate you often highlight on this committee, our small businesses are also our farmers and ranchers who feed all of us, but are often left out of the discussions and I believe are left out of the regulators when they think about these rules and how they'll be impacted. Second question would be for you, Mr. O'Leary. What are the biggest things you think the federal government ought to do to support our businesses and our rural, smaller communities across this country?
It's to focus on the liquidity right now at regional community banks, where particularly around payroll, that Wednesday night is crucial. So if you think about what they draw down on from the banks and have for 100 years plus, is they need capital for plant and equipment. That's longer term loans. They need to factor their receivables. If you're selling widgets to a big box retailer and they're paying you in 90 days, you need that cash in 30. And obviously payroll. And so immediately, I think the 4,000 plus banks will probably consolidate down to 3,000 or something in the next 5 years. During that consolidation period, there's going to be a lot of instability in the bank that is being merged or acquired or whatever. Right now, the way the rules are, it's cheaper to let a bank fail right now because the government bails out the bank, then you go buy the assets. That's kind of nuts. That should be fixed. Let the market be the market. But there's going to be a consolidation. And I think supporting payroll during that period would be number one. And just this regulation right now being contemplated, they're in gridlock. They don't know what the liquidity requirements are going to be, so they don't loan anything. I mean, it's pretty bad. So I'm glad you're having these hearings. That's the right question. But this has got to be scrutinized at the regional level now. The big guys are having no problems at all.
That's right.
Plus, you're about to give them another $2 trillion because there's none of it for small guys. bring that up one more time with feeling. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. With that, I yield back the balance of my time, which I don't have any more of. So thank you, Mr. Chairman. Appreciate it.